Being poor is not having too little, it is wanting more. Desire is a motivating and intrinsic force that drives human beings in search of pleasures and needs. It is a central concept in psychoanalysis and is characterized by being unconscious. However, desire is not easily accessible to consciousness, influenced by drives and past experiences. These drives can be made by external influences, such as social networks, our friends, work colleagues, advertisements, and even family members. All these drives influence us to be inclined towards subconscious desires, which can seek pleasure. This pleasure is a means to an innate end in that person's psyche. The purpose can be money, status, comfort, recognition, and all the more intrinsic selfish desires we possess. Who hasn't wanted to feel a dose of idolatry, a dose of recognition, or a drop of pleasure from the adrenaline rush that desire gives us? We human beings are a bag of blood and bones, not unlike other animals. The only thing that sets us apart is our ability to strive for potential. However, just like them, we have animalistic desires, which influence our longing for more, influence our longing for the best. But the question is, how much does desire satisfy us? Does desire really satisfy us, or is it a mere illusion? Well, according to Arthur Schopenhauer, a 19th century Polish philosopher who had his work cut out for him by Immanuel Kant, he said that desire is the root cause of human suffering, and that the pursuit of desire leads to an endless cycle of dissatisfaction. He believed that desires are not fleeting, but are deeply rooted in the essence of our being. And because of the culture we live in, these issues are much more accepted and suggestive, often being pushed into the subconscious and continuing to exert a great influence on our lives, in most cases in a negative and disturbing way. And this leads us to make automatic decisions, to live on automatic, to not even realize that we're sinking and not understand why. I, Draxel, strongly believe that nowadays these desires arise as a reflection of social networks, bringing emotions such as envy and greed to the surface. Schopenhauer will show us why this is destructive. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most brilliant and pessimistic philosophers, was one of the first philosophers to really question the value of existence, to systematically combine Eastern and Western modes of thought, such as Buddhism, Hinduism, and Kant's philosophy, and to introduce the arts as a serious philosophical focus. Schopenhauer is perhaps one of the darkest and most comprehensive philosophers in Western history. Schopenhauer's main contributions to philosophy, to our understanding, were things like desire, happiness, and suffering. He believed that the feeling of happiness that love brings is only the temporary interruption of the will, the escape from a pain imposed by the will. According to him, love is only the blind and irrational will that all beings have to reproduce, thus continuing life and consequently suffering. For Schopenhauer, only suffering is positive because it makes itself felt easily, while what we call happiness is negative because it is the mere momentary interruption of pain or boredom, the latter being the inherent condition of existence. He said, "I have reminded the reader that every state of well-being, every feeling of satisfaction has a negative character. That is, it consists of freedom from pain, which is the positive element of existence. It follows, therefore, that the happiness of any life must be measured, not by its joys and pleasures, but by the extent to which it has been free from suffering, from positive evil." Based on this, Schopenhauer defines pain as positive because it can be added to and diminished, while happiness is negative because it is only the absence of pain. Desire is not just something momentary, but something continuous. And this is where things get interesting. It's no secret that many wealthy celebrities who have access to the greatest pleasures that are not available to the general population are often problematic and unhappy people. You ride the bus, you wish you had a car. You buy a car, you wish you had a better house. You buy a better house, you wish you could travel. Wishes, even if they are fulfilled, never satisfy us. An example of this is the vast majority of Olympic athletes. After years of wanting to be Olympic champions and finally succeeding, they feel a huge void and fall into depression. Schopenhauer said, "Life is a constant oscillation between the desire to have and the boredom of possessing. The idea of achieving our desires is a journey towards goals, a process that becomes the reason why human beings wake up every day in search of something." Imagine a child around Christmas. They've been longing for a toy for months. They ask their parents for it, draw it in their notebooks, and even dream about it. On Christmas Eve, she goes to open her presents, and the next thing she knows, she's got the toy she wanted so much. She's happy and cheerful and plays with it all night, until she falls asleep from exhaustion. The next day, she wakes up and plays with the toy with a little less enthusiasm than the night before. In less than a week, the child no longer cares about the toy. Naval Ravikant said, "Desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want." The problem with Naval's phrase, seen from Schopenhauer's point of view, is that it gives the illusion of happiness. But once you've achieved it, the desire leaves. The supposed happiness is just a peak of pleasure, and soon it leaves you bored. Schopenhauer said that we cannot know the world exactly as it is, outside of what we perceive and feel. He believed that, in fact, there aren't many things outside of our experience. For him, everything that exists beyond what we feel is a single thing, a kind of force or essence that lies behind everything. This force is something that has no form, takes up no space, and is not bound by time. It's like an energy that makes life happen. Schopenhauer explained that we can understand a little about this force by looking inside ourselves, because our body is the only place where we can feel something that is not just an idea or image of the world, but something we really experience. When we look inside ourselves, Schopenhauer said that we find a restless energy, something that pushes us to survive, eat, grow, and have children. He called this energy the will to live. With this, he concluded that reality has two sides. One is the way we see and think about things, and the other is this unique and powerful force that makes everything exist. It is important to understand that for Schopenhauer, this will is not like what we call will in everyday life, such as wanting to do something. It's not a conscious desire, like what we feel when we want to play or eat something tasty. For him, this will is something that acts without thinking, without having a clear goal, just wanting to continue existing. The whole world works because of this will. It's what makes everything move, grow, and even fight to continue living, even if it doesn't have a defined reason or purpose. Pleasure can be supported by an illusion. Schopenhauer said that wise people don't even try to seek happiness. Instead, they worry about avoiding life's sufferings. And if they don't happen to feel pleasure, that's not a problem because pleasure is like an illusion, something that seems real but isn't. But how can we organize our lives to feel less pain? Pain can come from many things. For Schopenhauer, these things have to do with the way we see ourselves and the world around us. For example, if we are not honest about our qualities, we can end up suffering. That's why he said it's very important to know ourselves well, understanding what we do well and where we have difficulties. When we use and improve the skills we already have, we avoid the pain that appears when we realize our weaknesses. Another example he gave was that the most important thing is not what we have, but who we are. What really matters is how we feel inside. For him, health and happiness are much more valuable than fame or money. Schopenhauer said, "A healthy beggar is happier than a sick king." This means that it's better to be poor and in good health than to be rich and sick. That's why he thought it wise to value health more than anything else and to always seek joy. After all, these two things are what make us feel good in the present moment. Schopenhauer said that instead of trying to find a perfect happiness that doesn't exist, we should focus on reducing pain whenever we can. This doesn't mean giving up on everything, but changing the way we think, paying attention to the problems along the way and looking for ways to solve them so that life's journey is less difficult. He believed that art and resignation were very important tools to help us do this. Art, according to him, is something that allows us to forget about life's problems and sufferings for a while. When we admire a painting, listen to music, or read a story, we can feel a kind of relief, as if we were outside the world and its pains. It's like taking a break from our desires and worries. Resignation, on the other hand, is learning to accept life as it really is and giving up selfish desires, those we only think of ourselves. Schopenhauer believed that by doing this, we can live with more compassion and kindness. When we look at other people's suffering and try to help them, we also reduce our own suffering. He said that by acting with kindness, we find a greater purpose for our lives and feel more connected to others. Imagine a traveler who sees someone fall into a hole. The instinct to reach out and help that person, for Schopenhauer, not only relieves the pain of the one who has fallen, but also makes the helper feel better. By helping someone else, it's as if he's making everyone's path easier, including his own. It's a way of showing that by taking care of others, we also take care of ourselves. The secret is not to paint the sky with unreal stars, but to learn to erase the shadows of the night. Reducing suffering is the most we can achieve, and that is already a profound and liberating form of wisdom. This form of freedom is often confused with wealth on social media these days, and although he was born to a wealthy father, Schopenhauer knew that money would prevent pain, but would not bring happiness. He therefore criticized the pursuit of wealth for wealth's sake. He said, "It is difficult, if not impossible, to define the limits that reason should impose on the desire for wealth, because there is no absolute or definite quantity of wealth that satisfies a man. The quantity is always relative, that is, just enough to maintain the proportion between what he wants and what he gets. Measuring a man's happiness only by what he gets, without also considering what he hopes to get, is as useless as trying to express a fraction that has a numerator but no denominator. A man never misses things that never occurred to him to want. He is just as happy without them. Meanwhile, another man who could have 100 times more feels miserable because he hasn't managed to get the one thing he wants." Pain is not caused by lack, but by dissatisfaction and insufficiency. Now I ask you, what is your pain?